Well, hello. Yes, we're wearing the same
We're back.
clothes. No, it was not. No, these were not taken separate days. They were all taken on the same day. Don't worry. We actually clean ourselves. Our wives probably wouldn't allow us not to. But here we are, episode 2 of the Rapid Fire preseason. A and B Talk Sports, college football. Last episode, like we said, we had the ACC and SEC preview. This episode is going to be the two big conferences, Big 10, Big 12. We're going to start with the conference that I guess can say they are the best conference in college football because they have won the conference. They won the national championship the last 3 years with Michigan, Ohio State, and then Indiana last season. But we're going to start with the Big 10. And if you are new to this, didn't see last episode, again, the rundown is conference championship game, who we have playing and winning, surprise team, disappointing team, coach who could get fired in the middle of the season if any apply, player of the year, and then breakout player. So again, we're starting off with the Big 10. Ben, who plays in Indianapolis on NBC, ABC, or NBC, or whoever is hosting the game this year? Who's playing in the Big 10 title game?
I foresee it being very chalk, which would be Oregon versus Indiana,
Oh, okay.
and and I foresee that Indiana will get it done.
So I am not going to make it chalk. I do not have Indiana there. I do have Oregon there. I have Oregon playing Ohio State in the Big Ten title game. I do have Oregon winning. We will get to Indiana. I guess just some talks about Indiana. I get the last 2 seasons have been magical, and I'm not foreseeing a complete drop off, but I do think if you look at their schedule this year, it is a little bit tougher. Last season, they had the one big game in the regular season, that being they played Oregon in Eugene. This year, they do host Ohio State. They go to Michigan. They also have USC. They have to travel to Washington, so it's a tougher test. I see
Oh yeah, that's
Indiana
way
going.
tougher. Yeah.
Yeah, and because last year was pretty much a one game season. It was in the last 2 years, it's been one game seasons. 2 years ago it was the Ohio State. Last year it was Oregon, and it was just like, hey, take care of the business in the other games, you'll be fine. Last year, of course, they took care of business in every game, going 16-0 for the first time in 130 years. We've had that. So I have Ohio State beating Indiana in the regular season, beating Oregon in the regular season. Each team enters their, or Ohio State enters their 12-0, Oregon 11-1, but then Oregon wins the rematch in Indianapolis and wins their second Big Ten title in 3 years in the conference. Surprising team for me is the team we kind of talked about last episode with their quarterback Damon Williams. My surprising team is the Washington Huskies. Their win total, which is what I'm going off of for these excuse me, for these picks. The win total is set 7.5 on FanDuel. Now they open up the season with 3 cupcakes. They play Washington. No offense, Washington State, but you're kind of a theater to other conferences now. Your best quarterback in the last few years. One went to Miami, one went to Oklahoma, and it's still there. But you open against Washington State, Utah State, East Washington. Then they they host Minnesota to start Big Ten play. We talked about last year. Teams traveling the time zones have not fared well in those games. And they also host Indiana. And I think that is where this team goes from, oh, like they're an okay team. Like they've played not good schedule. Like they'll have 8-9 wins. I think this is when this team could become a 10-2 type team. I think they beat Indiana in the regular season and they knock Indiana off of out of the picture. I have Indiana going 9-3. I'll just get to that. But not the disappointing team for me. Washington, though, is the surprising team.
Nice. I would say um I can just add a little bit of color to Oregon, Indiana. I think for me, Indiana, I just trust their coaching. I think,
Yeah.
like you said, their schedule's a lot tougher, but man, they were the best coach team last year. They didn't lose any of their coaches really, and I don't see the standard dropping off. So I think, yes, it's a tougher schedule, but Even if you lose like one or two of those games, I still think they're right in there with the tiebreakers and potential tiebreakers and everything. And then Oregon, I mean, their defense is not really going to lose a step, and their offense realistically should improve. And I have that
If their running game
happening with
improves, yeah, if their running game improves, they're gonna be really tough to deal with.
foreshadow for my breakout player about their running
Oh,
game. Um,
there we go.
surprising team for me is Michigan. I think their over under is 8.5. I have full confidence that Bryce Underwood can bounce back. I mean, they had all kinds of crazy things going on within their football program last year, and there's no way that anyone really can function at a
Yeah,
high clip with that going on. And so I think with some, let's say, more,
comparable,
yeah, more
yet less than that
just
coaching.
like steady coaching, not
Yeah,
kind of chaotic, like a
yeah,
little more stability. I think that Bryce Underwood could flourish. I think they still have a lot of talent on defense. I mean, it's hard to even fathom that they were one of these top blue blood teams just 2 years ago, and so I think they go back into that and can easily go 9-3. I could see them going over on their win total just with
yeah,
a Bryce Underwood bounce back.
yeah, for sure. I'll get to that in a little bit when we talk about our breakout players as well. My disappointing team is a team that you've seen a lot of talks about. It's like, oh, this is a scheduled team, scheduled team, scheduled team, and so everyone's like, oh, this team could easily make the playoff just based off their schedule. But I feel like we talked about in the last episode how we had all those quarterbacks last year who were like, hey, they're going to take that next step forward. This team has a quarterback that is kind of like, let me double check on him. It's kind of like SMU's quarterback, where he had a big year 2 years ago. Last year, kind of fell off a little bit, dealt with some injuries. But this year, new school, same coaching staff, expecting a big bounce back. My disappointing team is Penn State. They're over, and I believe said we're in that 8.5, 9.5 range. A lot of people think they'll go 10-2 just based off their schedule. But if you really look at the meat of their schedule, they travel to Washington, like I mentioned. They travel to Michigan. They traveled to Northwestern in the first game of Northwestern's brand new stadium, first Big Ten game, I should say, in their brand new stadium. So that's a team that I think could easily, yeah, they might win 8, 9 games, but the preseason hype of everyone saying, oh, 11-1, 10-2, this team's going to make the playoff. I just don't see it happening because of the quarterback, Rocco Beck. Now, is he a good college quarterback? Absolutely. But he's one of those quarterbacks like we talked about last year. We had all these quarterbacks who had all these preseason expectations. They're in the same system. They're going to take that leap. And then none of them did. They all took steps back. And Penn State was bit by that last year. Drew Rattler, I think they'll be bit by that again this year with Rocco Beck.
I can see that. Yeah, it's hard to all anytime that it's schedule dependent that a team's going to be good. It's hard to trust
Yeah.
that because all it takes is one team being better than expected.
Yeah.
For my disappointing team, I kind of took it a different route than the previous times. I think this is just a team that's going to take a step down compared to where they've been recently, and I think that's Illinois. They've kind of been teetering on that 9-3, like competing
Yeah.
for conference championship, man, at least in that game. And I think they're going to take a step back. Their over under does reflect that a bit. It's at 7.5 compared to, it was a lot higher last year with Luke Altmaier. And so I think they're just going to take a step back. I don't think that, realistically, like looking at the over unders, there weren't any teams that I was like, oh, this is super wrong. I
Right.
think really Illinois just being 7-5 potentially would be a huge disappointment compared to where they've been, and I think that that's very possible just with
Yeah.
all the new in their building.
No, yeah, especially, and that's one of the things that drew me to drew me to Penn State for that was like you're talking about an entire new coaching staff and a mixture of rosters. And while in some cases in the transfer portal era that's worked, like in Indiana, that worked. Like immediately they went from a 3-9 team to 11-1, made the college football playoff, and then last year they won the national title. But when you look at like Illinois, same coaching staff pretty much, but new quarterback. and the schedule, like the over under and the schedule reflects a team that could just take a step back from where they've been, like you said, with the 9-3, 8-4 seasons that they've been accustomed to the last handful of years. Do you have a coach in the Big Ten getting fired in the middle of the season?
I think USC is gonna have a decent year, so I don't really think this is going to happen, but I think Lincoln Riley would be a prime candidate if the
Of
season does go
course. Yeah.
downhill.
Hey, they've been prone to that. You think about, the last, I'm trying to think, like, I think not Steve Carroll, Pete Carroll was the last head coach they had who made it through the season and then left because after him, it was Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin was fired on a tarmac. Steve Sarkisian was fired because he was an alcoholic. Hey, like he got his help, great for him, but he was fired midseason. Clay Helton fired midseason. So they have been accustomed to, hey, if it's not working out, we're going to cut you loose. We don't care when, where, how it is, it's going to happen. So that easily, I think, could be, especially if they start out, you know, especially if they, take us like if it's apparent early in the season or early, it's if it's apparent that it's not going to work out the way it is with Malala coming back, all this stuff. It's like, hey, this has to be the season that you take that step
Yeah,
and win that 10th game, win that 11th game, get to the playoff, compete for the top Big Ten title. It just hasn't worked for that. I mean, his best year was his first year when he had Caleb.
yep,
For me, I went to a coach who probably could have been fired last season, probably could have been fired the year before that. I went with Luke Fickle. Now, granted, he should have been fired when he decided to bring in Phil Longo and run the air raid with Wisconsin. I mean, that
yeah,
alone, even if they even if they started 10-0 after that, that decision alone should have had him fired. But he was given the leeway to change offenses, things like that. But I just don't see Wisconsin. I mean, like I said, they play Penn State. That's obviously going to be a tough game. But you start out the season in Lambeau against Notre Dame. You play some tomato cans, but then you're at Penn State. You're hosting Michigan State, who I think could take a step forward. They were also in my contention for surprising teams, just because that's Pat Fitzgerald's mo. He always goes over on his win total every other year, and his last year as a head coach, he would have gone over on his win total. um, they play UCLA, who I think is going to be better. USC, we talked about. Iowa's obviously Iowa. I think it could easily go back quick for Wisconsin. They don't now. They missed the other three. They missed the big three. They missed the Oregon's, the Indianas, the Ohio States. But every other team that they play is pretty damn good. So I easily could see if it starts bad for Wisconsin, especially once you get into Big Ten play, that they just go ahead and pull the trigger and find out what they can. And it honestly sounds like it's almost like the Oklahoma State situation there, where donors are starting to pull their money because they're wanting the school to make a decision before they put the money back in to help NIL funds with the entire school, which sometimes that's the reason why you make a decision that you maybe don't want to make. Player of the year in the conference.
Jeremiah Smith, best player in the. I mean, he's gonna be the best player in the conference. I didn't want to overthink it too much. I
Yeah,
think he will get a lot more targets this year just with Carnell Tate being gone now. I think that they're gonna
right.
have to force feed him a little bit more, and so I think with more targets comes more production, and he's awesome. So
Yeah, I think that's the thing with I got Jeremiah Smith as well, and that's the thing with Ohio State. They always have a good junior or good senior wide receiver, and then they have a freshman wide receiver that is going to be the best in the country. I saw a TikTok or something a few months ago where it said he needs, like, by mid-season in just 3 years of college football, or 2.5 years, I guess, he's going to break their career reception, touchdown, and yards records. Like, he's needs like 5 to 8 touchdowns, needs like 40 catches, needs like 800 yards to set all three of those records. And he's done that in, like I said, like, granted, they had the expanded season with the playoff as a true freshman, where he played 16 games versus the normal 12 or 13, 14 that you were accustomed to. But still, breaking it in less than 3 full seasons as a college athlete, and that's Ohio State. Like, so those aren't like those records aren't like, easy to break. Like, they've had a great run at receiver the last 10, 15 years. So, and even before that. So I think also have Jeremiah Smith. I think if the wide receiver gets to New York, it's him. breakout player you said with Oregon when I talked about their running game, it kind of, you pinged your ears there. Where is your breakout player?
Yep, it's their starting running back, Jordan Davison. He had right under 700 yards and 15 touchdowns last year. I could see the touchdown number uptick, and I think he could easily. I know they spread the wealth.
Yeah.
They use a lot of running backs, but I still think he's the clear alpha and could definitely go over 1,000 yards rushing. And then if he
And
increases
I
the
believe
touchdown
he got
number,
hurt like at some point because that was the big thing in the Indiana game. I think he got hurt in the Orange Bowl or something because the big thing
yeah,
in
I
the
think that's
Indiana
right.
game was the fact how they their starting running back name was a guy who was in the portal.
Yeah, I
Like
think they were pretty
that's how
injured.
depleted they
Yeah,
were at the running back position. And mine is, and I kind of hinted at mine's Bryce Underwood. We talked about Andy Staples was on the Brandon Walker College Football Show, and I didn't realize how bad it was at Michigan. But Sharon Moore not only was doing what he was doing off the field, which we're not going to get into that, but he was fighting with the defensive coordinator. He said, "Oh, I don't need a. I have. I'm the quarterback coach. I don't need a quarterback coach to help this true freshman." And they had predicated their offense to be under the guy who they thought was going to start because their plan initially was not to play Bryce. They were going to play the other guy. I forgot his name, but he ended up getting hurt. And then they're like, oh, well, the same offense that fit this guy's skill set, it'll fit Bryce's skill set. We're not going to have to run him. But now you bring in Cal Winningham, you bring in a lot of good coaches that he brought over with him from Utah. And he actually has a quarterback coach now. So they're going to be able to mature his game. And I think Michigan goes 10-2 this year. I think that they beat Indiana. They lose to, I think they play Oregon and Ohio State. So I think those are their two losses. But I think he's going to get, excuse me, he's going to get Michigan back into the college near or competing for the college football playoff.
yeah, I agree. I mean, the raw talent is just ridiculous, and
Yeah.
you can't beat that. So
Yeah. So that is the Big Ten preview. A little quicker than the SEC, but I mean, we're two SEC alums. We're gonna spend more time on that because it's more exciting. And Big Ten, and the thing with the SEC is the SEC's top. I mean, it's all loaded. Big Ten, I really think is just top heavy. So now let's move on
yeah,
to
the
the other
only
big.
team we can just touch quickly. I guess the only team we didn't really talk about was Ohio State, other than Jeremiah Smith. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on them? I mean, I think
So, like I said, I have them entering the Big Ten championship game at tip 12-0. I do have them losing Oregon. I think it's kind of the same thing with Texas, where I had Texas 11-1. I had them going undefeated in the SEC, losing to Ohio State. But I think both fall under the same category that the quarterbacks who we talked about in the last show that we were talked about last year, they fall under. Whereas now I get it, Julian's saying he's a redshirt sophomore, so we've only seen him for a season, but he still is a guy who we're expected, okay, he's got that year under his belt. He's going to take that massive leap. But if you look at what their worst two games were the last two games in which it was the two games they lost, Indiana and Miami in the Cotton Bowl. And those were the games in which the defenses they were going up against actually just pinned their ears back and said, hey, we're just going to rush you. And you're going to have to get out of it. You're going to have to make good decisions. And he did it in both games. I think the X factor for them in between meeting my expectations of going 12-0, but possibly or meeting your expectations or below them I don't know where you had them going, but of falling off is their running back room. Like it's a heavy, heavy room. Josh Pate talked about it where the starter last year was Bo Jackson, and he's projected to be the second or third guy. Like he's not projected to be the number one option. And while that depth is good because we've talked about before, depth is very, very difficult to find in this day and age in college football because if a guy's not playing and he's a 5-star or 4-star, he's just going to go somewhere else where he can play. He's not going to sit there and mature, develop. He's like, hey, I want to play. And this team's going to pay me $2.5 million to play, whereas you're paying me $1 million to not. So sorry, I'm taking the money in the playing time. But I do wonder if, and also with Ohio State, the other thing that kind of brings me question is they did lose a lot at linebacker. Like Arvell Reese went in the first round. They had another guy go in the first round. But, like, they did lose and Caleb Downs obviously went in the first round as well, so they are replacing a lot, and yes, it is Ohio State, so you're accustomed to, like you are with Georgia, like you are with Alabama, of just, "Okay, Nets wave, Nets wave." And it's at some point, okay, at some point, that Nets wave is going to take a step down. Like they're not going to meet those expectations. So I had pause with putting them at 12-0. Their schedule just like their toughest, they have two tough games. And they're both on the road. It's in Austin, it's in Bloomington against Indiana. And while I have them winning those, if they lost both of those games, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah, that I think you kinda hit the nail on the head for me is, like, I will say, wait, if Bo Jackson's their 3rd best running back, that gives me a lot of confidence because he wasn't that
Right.
great. So if they got people that are better than him, I'm all good for that. I think that'd be great. I think, they're right at 3rd, right under Oregon, Indiana for me. I think that they're gonna be, a really good team still, and, I do definitely have questions about the defense, just how it comes together. I mean, I think, the expectation is that they'll be good, but I think they'll take a step down. Obviously, Caleb Downs was awesome, and losing him is a huge loss. So we'll see. I think the first couple of weeks will tell us how good they're going to be. I think we'll have a good sample size, primarily on the defensive side. Like if they're really good defensively, I think they'll be okay for the season. But
I mean,
anyways,
that week 2 game in Austin is gonna, I think, be the litmus test that you have to look at for the rest of the season.
yeah,
Because like we talked about with the talent that Texas has brought in on the offensive side of the ball, and you could score 35, 40 points a game. But if your defense is giving up 40, 50 points a game, you're not saying that that's going to happen, but if you're always banking on your talent on offense, your receivers, your quarterback, whatever, and the defense is it, because that's what hurt them in the playoff was the defense just pinned their ears back and and the Mesidor and Bain just rushed him, and that's going to get in a guy's head. And so if that happens in Austin, happens in Bloomington, hell, they haven't beat Michigan in Columbus since before COVID. So I know they won the game last year, but they haven't beaten them in Columbus since 2018. So who knows what that looks like, especially if Michigan has the type of season that we think that they might. But yeah, I think they're okay. Obviously, like I said, I haven't go 12-0 in the regular season, but I do not know if I still have a lot of question marks. Like it's the same thing with Texas. I'm putting them here because of what I think should happen, like should be the case. But obviously, like it is a complete surprise. I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest, like I said, if they go 10-2, not
I think we both expect at minimum that the Ohio State Texas game will be more than 14-7 final score.
right.
Like, I think it's going to
Exactly.
be a way more
Exactly.
high scoring.
It should be way more high scoring. I think both teams, especially Ohio State, I mean, that's the second game that a lot of those guys are going to be playing. And it's the first real game because they played Cupcake week 1. But, the Big Ten wants to dog walk the SEC, or dog talk about the SEC in our scheduling. Okay. How's Western Illinois looking out for you? But yeah, I think Ohio State's good. And like I said, I have been going 12-1. I just don't know if it's where I still have questions. Um,
For sure, for sure. But it's
so
Ohio
that
State, there's a trust factor there, so
exactly. And like that's the thing, like it's okay. Like I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, like should I put them in the Big Ten title game? Yeah, like they're gonna get in the Big Ten title game, but then you remember, well, like last year was the first time they had played in that since COVID. Like it was the first time they played in there since 2020. They haven't won a Big Ten title since 2020, which is crazy to think about with where Urban had it and Ryan Day had it. They have not won a Big Ten title since 2020, which is crazy.
yep.
So moving on with the Big Ten, moving over to the Big 12. Now, a lot of question marks coming from the team who I think we might both have winning the conference. At least I do. But it's the team, and it's kind of like the ACC where it's this team that's above, you think it's above everyone, but a lot of question marks coming out of Lubbock. So I'll go ahead and say it. I have Texas Tech winning the Big 12 title. Obviously, there's the saga that, I mean, people probably forget about it now because of the saga now with LSU and all these players trying to come back. But we thought that was going to be the saga of the offseason with the whole Brennan Sorsby situation. They go all in on him to transfer from Cincinnati. He transfers. Then the gambling stuff comes out, this and that, where they were lucky Whereas Indiana may not have been because they lost Alberto Mendoza after they brought in Josh Hoover, who I think, again, I apologize for calling you a furry at the beginning of last season. I had Josh Hoover. I had been misled on TikTok, but Texas Tech did do what Indiana was not able to do, and what Ole Miss wasn't able to do, what a lot of teams aren't able to do, and that's bring in a transfer quarterback and keep the incumbent who thought he was going to be the guy. They kept Will Hammond, which lucky for them, because if they didn't, I don't know where they would be, because the Sorsby situation, of course, played out where it did. They were going to sue. Then he just said, "Hey, let's just part ways," and now he's wherever he is. But they were able to keep Will Hammond, and I think they did lose a lot on defense. You lost Malcolm or yeah, not Malcolm Rodriguez. You lost Jacob Rodriguez. You lost David Bailey, the one who got picked in the number 2 or number 3 overall by the Jets. So you lost a lot on the defensive side of the ball. So it's kind of the same thing with Ohio State of like, okay, you lost a lot. Are you able to replace that? But the difference between Ohio State and Texas Tech is we're used to with Ohio State. Texas Tech is new to this party. Texas Tech's new to being a preseason top 10, top 15 team year in, year out. Just the day and age with NIL, they have the oil money. So do you also have Texas Tech winning the Big 12? I'll talk about who I have them playing, but do you also have Texas Tech winning the Big 12, or are you going another way?
I do. I don't think I want to get cute with that. I think, baseline talent level, they're head and shoulders above everyone. Especially defensively. I mean, they could win every game 7-6. It's completely possible. So I do. I think I trust them defensively, and I just trust that they are always gonna, at this day and age, with the amount of money they're spending, that they're going to have a lot of talent. I think also what last year showed is that they're pretty good coaches as well, and they
Yeah.
can bring a locker room together. So, like, I mean, last year they proved they brought in a ton of new guys, and they all kind of meshed. So I think that's at least a good sign moving forward that that can continue to happen. I mean, it's not a guarantee, right? Look at Florida State year one with they went should have probably gone to the playoffs with Norvell, and then the next year dropped off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Which that a lot of that was due to the quarterback. So I don't foresee something like that happening. I mean, Florida State, that was kind of an extreme case because they had like two first round D-line talents also in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Anyways, sorry, going down a
Okay.
rabbit hole, but Texas
Yeah.
Tech
Yeah.
should still be very good,
Yeah.
even if
So
their
who do you have
quarterback
them?
drops off.
Yeah. So who do you have them beating?
I went with a little bit different team. I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but I went Utah.
We're the same. We're the same.
Yes.
I
Nice.
it's so I have Utah. I'll just piggyback in because I also think they're my surprise team. Because I think when you look at the thing with the Big 12
Same.
is
Same.
you could probably pick any team to be the surprise team. You could pick any team to be the most disappointing team, but outside of Texas Tech, you just don't know. But the thing with
Yeah.
Utah, and I know I talked about this with Penn State, if you look at their schedule, they don't play Texas Tech. They don't play Oklahoma State, who was also in my running, but I just don't know. I don't know if Lightning can strike twice with a different team with, Eric Morris being able to do what Kirk Signetti did with bringing over an entire roster like Signetti did with James Madison, revamping the roster, turning the team around from 39 to the playoff. Oklahoma State went 1-11, 2-10 last year, obviously, and then Chandler Morris comes over, brings in Drew Mestemaker, but Utah doesn't play them. Their conference schedule is very, very, very manageable. And again, we talked about the SEC now going to 9 games. Big 12 has been in 9 games, but if you look at Utah, they don't play. They don't, like I said, they don't play you. They don't play Texas Tech. They don't play Oklahoma State. If I'm looking at their schedule, I have question marks about every single team in conference that they're playing, except for the Holy War against BYU, which they host that game. So I seriously think Utah can. I know that there's a new coach, first time in since 2005 or 2004 that Kyle Whittingham is not the head coach. But I think part of that was, hey, let's try to see what some new blood can do, because that's the deal with Utah. It's like you have to sometimes bring in new blood, and I think that Utah is able to easily go. 11-1 with that schedule. And even if they lose to BYU, I think BYU, they've shown it year in, year out where they'll be in the driver's seat. They'll start 7-0, 8-0, and then they'll lose two or three. They'll lose two games that they shouldn't. And I think this year they'll lose those games and it will cost them a chance at the Big 12 title.
Yeah, that's fair. I think to piggyback off that, I would say that Utah has a really good baseline
Yeah.
stylistically. Like they're tough. That's not going to change with the new coach because he was there. It's not like he's coming from Cal and trying to bring a whole
Yeah.
new offense and defensive style and profile in. Like he's probably going to be a very similar heavy run, play action, and then like focus on being really good at defense and the trenches. And I think that can go a long way. And then the other thing too, this may be a bad comparison, but I could see it being similar to how when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame, Marcus
Yeah.
Freeman just came in and kind of overtook it, and he was like already there. He knew what was going on, and he just improved it. And so I could see something like that happening where Utah like knew who they had. They pushed Whittingham out because they really just didn't want to lose the coach that they wanted to come in. So I would say that Utah's in good shape to get into that conference championship game. And like you said, it's pretty open. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think the thing with Utah is it's very, very like we talked about the schedules manageable, but the thing you brought up with Notre Dame, I think that's a great comparison. Like again, they hired. Let's double check so I had to get his name so we don't seem like I don't seem like an idiot. Yeah, Morgan Scaly, who again, he was the DC for the last 10 years. So exactly what Marcus Freeman was. And he was able to do what Marcus Freeman was also able to do with Notre Dame. He came over, kept the players. No one entered the portal and left with Kelly. Not many players entered the portal and left with Kelly. And he was able to keep most of the recruiting class. Now, granted, at Utah, not really worried about that much of the recruiting class because especially in the Big 12, especially, you're not really worried about that much about high school recruits. You're worried more about transfer portal just because that's how the best team in the conference does their business. It's kind of like how you have to do your business a little bit. But being able
yeah.
to keep everyone in place, not lose anyone to Michigan, and Winningham just pretty much took Michigan's roster, and Scaly's able to keep Utah's roster. That I think is the big point with them is just being able to keep everything at keel. The only thing that's going to change is the guy who's driving the bus. The passengers and everyone else, all the parts of it are still the same. Who's your disappointing team in the Big 12?
So I think I'm back and forth on this team, but I really just don't trust them based on their history in recent years. Kansas State is my disappointing team. Their over under is 8.5. And I just think that's putting a whole lot of trust in a team that's disappointed year in, year out. The past few years, especially with Avery Johnson still being quarterback, the volatility with him is insane. Like, yes, he can run for an 80-yard touchdown run, like any given play, but man, he's been so inconsistent. It's hard to
Yeah.
trust. So I think they're disappointed. They're going to be disappointing yet again, especially with an 8.5 win total. It's crazy.
Mine is Houston. Their win totals around the same 8.5, 7.5. Because I think a lot of thing with these win totals in the Big 12, if you go and look at them, it's Texas Tech, obviously like at 10, 11.5, but then it's everyone else. And like there's a big group at that 8.5, 7.5 win total because you just don't know who that second team is going to be. It could be Utah, it could be Houston, it could be Kansas State now because they did bring in Colin Klein, but I think he's got a year or two away from because he's really got to I think get his quarterback in there. Though Avery Johnson does have a similar skill set to Marcel Reed, but we saw what that did with Texas A&M in the championship game, or excuse me, in the playoff, where if you drop back pass, you're just going to throw picks. So mine is Houston, and I really went off of kind of like you said with just teams that have consistently underperformed. Now, this is a team who had a good season last year. And if you look at their schedule, it does seem manageable, but they do play Texas Tech, they play Utah, and they play Oklahoma State. And those are the three teams who I think are going to finish the top three in the conference. I'm really big on, like, it was really hard to pick between Utah and Oklahoma State. I just went with the fact that Utah doesn't play Oklahoma State and Oklahoma State plays Texas Tech. And I think I would bank on Oklahoma State maybe dropping another one before I would bank on Utah dropping 2. And so
Yep.
tiebreakers with 9 games just keep you out. But with Houston, like I said, they play the 3 teams who I think are gonna be the 3 best teams in the conference, and you play pesky teams. You play Cincinnati, you play Baylor, which who knows what they're playing for. You play West Virginia, and I think they just have a true tough schedule that where I don't know if they're gonna be able to catapult what they did last year, winning 9 games into playing for the Big 12 championship game, where I think even though their win total says to set at 8.5, I think that's their expectations is making it to the Big 12 championship game, making it to Dallas to play Texas Tech, and I don't think they come close to that.
Yep. They're definitely fighting for that 2 spot, so I think, anything less under 9 and 3 would be pretty disappointing for them, for sure.
Best player, who do you got? Or player of the
Or
year.
did you have a
Best player,
coach
no best player.
midseason getting fired?
Oh, yes, I did. I have 2 options. One, I think
Okay.
resigns. One is if he resigns. The other is I think he'd get fired. I have Deion Sanders if he resigns, because I think he could go back quickly again. And I think he might just say, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm going back to the house. I got all the money. I don't need it. Keep the money. I don't want to screw you over and have you fire me, pay me a buyout. I think he just resigns. But if a guy is to get fired, I have Dave Aranda at Baylor. They had a lot of hype last season where they had Sawyer Robinson coming back, they had Michael Trigg, they had that shootout against Auburn where they lose it, and then their highlight after that was the next weekend they lost to, or excuse me, when they beat SMU, and then it was just kind of downhill from there. Their schedule isn't very manageable, in my opinion. It's very, very yeah, it's very, very hard. They play Arizona State, who I think could take a bounce back. They play Texas Tech, they play BYU, and they play, like I said, with Houston, they play some of those pesky teams like Iowa State, and they play Houston. So I think if Dave Aranda, if it gets bad early, they could just go ahead because he's really only he had the Big 12 championship game or Big 12 championship in 2021. And then outside of that, it's just steadily been going downhill. I think this is the year it crashes and burns.
Yeah, I could see that. I think, you know, on the flip side, obviously DJ Lagway has shown flashes, so there's always a chance that doesn't happen. But I wrote down Dion. I don't know. The only hesitation with Colorado is like their expectations aren't that high, so I don't know if
Right.
they would really fire him. But like you
That's
said, if he resigns, he's like, This is, I don't like losing. I'm tired of this job." Like I could
I
definitely
I
see that.
think I think that's where it is. I think that they could if they start 2 and 3, 2 and like 2 and 3, 3 or 4, something like that, and he's just like, you know, this was fun when I had Travis and my sons. It's not really that much fun anymore. I'm just gonna go ahead, go to the house. But like those are the only 2 teams that I could really see making a change. But I agree with Colorado. Like it's gonna have to be him walking away. They're not gonna fire him because he has brought so much eyes on that team to where they're on TV, they're on prime time with it, which was this game. Like they're on all this stuff to where it allows it makes up for the fact how their product they've only really had the one good year with Shador and Travis. And it brought them
Yeah,
a Heisman Trophy.
it's very true. My best player is Drew Nestemaker.
Okay.
I think that it's going to translate, and he's going to throw it all over everybody's defense. I don't. I do think that they'll have a really good year, especially compared to last year. But I don't know what they'll do. I just think he'll be probably the best quarterback on, maybe not the best team, but I think he'll
Right.
be the best player.
Mine is Devin Dampier. I really wanted to do the twofer and have him be my best player and my breakout player, but I also think we had him kind of as our breakout player last year. So it was like, oh, this year is going to be the year. So I didn't want to do that. But I think it's him. The big question mark is because I think Texas Tech, especially this year, like, because a lot of our picks have been like the best teams, anything like that. But I think with Dan Pierce, he's going to go as far as they take him. Like, yes, they have a collection of talent around him, but I think if he's able to go on a Brian Johnson, like just comparing him to Utah quarterbacks like Brian Johnson, Alex Smith, type runs where Tyler Huntley, where he's just able to steadily carry them to the success. If, especially if they go 11-1, 10-2, and they get to that Big 12 championship game, it's going to be off his back. And whatever they do, I think does fall through Devin Dampier. So I'm banking on him having a great season of being the best player in the conference.
I will say the one thing that he has going for him and is like Utah fans are probably have been driven crazy the past few years because their starting quarterback's always been hurt
Right.
before Dampier.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um,
Cam Rising, I believe. Yeah. Cam
yeah,
Rising.
Cam
Yeah.
Rising was literally just like hurt every single year, no matter what. And so I think as long as Dampier can stay healthy, Utah fans are going to be on
Yeah, they're gonna
cloud
be like,
nine.
"Okay,"
So
but, like, "Oh, we have a guy who can actually make it through 12, 13, 14 games."
like,
Yeah, and
oh,
then
we're not going to be terrible because we're using our third string quarterback.
quarter yeah,
Awesome.
or who's a
So
former walk-on. And then my breakout player is Will Hammond. I think if Texas Tech has the type of season that they could have, that they can have, I think is gonna be off of his it's gonna be with him at the helm and running the offense. But the big question mark I have for him is, can he be better than Baron Morton when that time comes? Because if you go back to the playoff game against Oregon, he wasn't. Like Baron Morton was. Now he did lead a great 2-minute drive to win the Patriots their second preseason game, so he is a Patriots preseason legend now. But with Will Hammond is that was the big thing that was the reason they went out and got Brandon Sorsby was they didn't have faith that Hammond could do better than Morton in that game tie, in that tight game. The opponents that the talent level is more even than it has been in conference play. That's when they went out and got Sorsby was they felt like Sorsby could elevate them above it. So now it's Hammond. Like if now, so him breaking out is going to be more after Big 12 play and after it's going to be the postseason. It's not really going to be during the regular season. But if he shows flashes of that he can rise them above when times are tough and he can rise above it and make the plays when the game's on the line, then I could easily see him being the breakout player.
yeah, I could see that. I think um, that Texas Tech fans would say like, "Oh, we just had the money to spend, so why not get the top transfer portal quarterback?" And I think Hammond, obviously coming off the injury, it's like, yeah, you want to at least, you might as well spend that money if you have it. So I
Yeah.
think they trust Hammond, but I don't, like you said, I think mm, uh, their ceiling was elevated with Sorsby. So
Yeah.
we'll see how good he can do. My breakout player is Wayshawn Parker, the Utah running back.
Okay.
Um, He had 981 rushing yards last year and 6 rushing touchdowns, and he had, like, a little under 200 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. I think that touchdown number is gonna go way up, and I think that he had 1,000 yards, um, all-purpose, so I think he could, and be closer to 1,500 all-purpose yards
Yeah.
and closer to 15 to 20 touchdowns. I think that with the season that we think Utah's gonna have, I think that's definitely doable, and that would have him as a breakout player considering if you're not rushing for 1,000 yards, I think you can still break out.
You can still break
So,
out. Yeah. Because you got to break out. You got to break that 1,000 yard um plateau, not plateau, but the barrier kind of.
the
Yeah,
hurdle, you
so
gotta get
the
it.
hurdle, there we go. But yeah, so again, we're not idiots. We know what we're talking about. So if y'all are smart with your money, go ahead, put it on Polymarket, FanDuel, whatever you use, and put it on a Utah Texas Tech conference championship game. But next episode, you'll get to see just how smart we are when we give you our 12-team playoff breakdown and break in who we think are going to be the G5 representative. So be on the lookout for that.
See you then.